Alrighty, well, this is going to be a special one. Was thinking about animal stuff recently and decided, you know what? This is something that's been such a recurring thing in Star Trek episodes that not every individual episode deals with animals, but, at least one episode per season for every season of Star Trek ever made. And most of the movies, too. Yeah, comes up a lot. And as such a ubiquitous plot element, it's something I felt like needed a bit of a special attention. So, what purpose does an animal have for use in the story? That varies extremely drastically because you have stuff like globflies. Globflies got mentioned in passing in dialogue as part of an analogy talking about how Streleb security vessels were harmless and barely even an annoyance. That's literally the only thing we know about them, is that they're small insects that are harmless. Ooh, kidding. Then you have stuff like the Genesis worm, which does not have a significant role in the story, but its existence is indicative of a plot element developing, which in this case was the fact that the Genesis planet is unstable due to the way it was created with that whatever energy matrix thingy. And their existence is a bad sign because the fact that it um, lets you know that the matrix's instability is still an ongoing problem and wasn't just a one and done. And of course was part of the reason why they decided they needed to get off the Genesis planet before it exploded, because they knew that it was going to at some point in the near future. Anyways, so that's one plot device you can use them for. What else we got? Here we have the Rigel 10 insects, which is just, again, it's just like something that's kind of like there for decorative purposes. Then you have this, which is an extremely unusual ocudogram because of the fact that it, one, casually drops that in universe there is in fact fossilized life on Mars, which in real life we've never found life on Mars. And in this case, it actually kind of sort of says that all of life on Mars died off at some point in the past, as the only life known on Mars is from fossils. However, that's all speculation as to the intent of the ocudogram because it is literally just an ocudogram and we genuinely don't know anything about it. This is the sort of thing that is much easier in a visual medium, like if you're giving players like a document to actually physically look at and notice that this is shoved into a corner somewhere. I mean, in the case of bugs, a lot of them are actually in there as just like visual things where like you see a thing in the scene to look like a thing and let you know that it's an alien planet because it doesn't look exactly like anything you ever see on Earth. And that's actually a big thing with animals in a lot of them, is that it's just there for decoration. But, some of them might have some level of being hazardous. This one is amusingly here solely because the fact that they're filming outdoors, and when they filmed this close up of William Shatner's face, he happened to have a fly crawling on his forehead because he's filming outdoors. And here we have several things that are, hey, you're on an alien planet. What kind of wildlife exists on that alien planet? Here's something weird that it's a mobile, an analog of a sea anemone, but it's also something that is knots living in water. This is an interesting thing with Nibiru, is that the environment that they came up with for Nibiru has several things that feel like they belong in an underwater environment, except they're not. And if you actually go underwater on Nibiru, you can see why things would want to not be in the water, because wow, that's big. And let's see here. Baku. Now, Baku is one of those cases where there's a lot of ambiguity. See, we don't know what the Baku people did to the planet in the Briar Patch. Wait, yeah, in the Briar Patch when they moved there. How many of these animals are actually native to the Baku planet, and how many of them are things that were native to whatever the actual Baku homeworld was that they abandoned? That is not mentioned in the movie and thus leaves a lot of speculation, especially this thing which is said to be a pet. And it's like, is it something that the kid who keeps it as a pet just happened to find in the environment? And this book, um, was this book written before the Baku moved to their current home, or was it written afterwards? We don't know. Also, don't bother looking that up behind the scenes. They didn't write that into the script. And but it's one of those things that's amusing to think about because of the fact that there's no real answer. And that's the thing you can do in Star Trek stories, though, is you find this ancient document talking about animals that are from a planet that you've never been to, and you might not even know which planet the book is talking about. And hey, you know what? Ancient lost technology, and then you have like creatures that maybe used to exist if you could figure out where they were supposedly coming from. Eh, if the story has a reason to go in that direction, might as well go for it. If it doesn't, well, then your players are probably going to ignore it or get so distracted that it'll mess the story up. Because there's some of them that have had some very, very significant roles in stories that this thing was just there to um, give the child something to do other than annoying the main characters. Because like he's keeping his little pet from getting squished in the invasion. That's all. Then you have Targs. Targs, because of the fact that they've been used so many times, you, well, see them looking a bit different in different times they've been used, because most of the Targs you see are like, okay, they're either CGI creatures or in some cases a practical effect by taking a real pig and dressing it up to look weird. But yeah, it's calling them Klingon pigs is a pretty good analogy. They're somewhat less safe to be around than Earth pigs, but hey, it's the Klingon homeworld. What were you expecting? Anyways, though, the Jackal Mastiff is another interesting thing here because the fact that they literally never tell us what exactly it is, because it's literally just there as like an alien dog being kept by some uh oh yeah, we don't have anything but in that behind a picture. But yeah, it's like this alien dog's being kept like a watchdog, and that he has these really gnarly looking teeth, which that doesn't look like a targ to me. But what exactly it's supposed to be, no one really says much about. Anyway, though, yeah, yeah, it just says Klingon Jackal uh, in one episode. Might have been talking about the same thing, or maybe not. Klingons have a lot of animals in their planet, presumably. Also, it is kind of mentioned that there's more than one breed of Targ, because again, there's presumably millions of the things, so having all of the Targs look exactly the same is not going to be uh, reasonable to expect. Then you have things that have major plot significance, like the Ophidian. Now, this is a Devidian animal. This is the only life form known to exist that comes from the same place that the Devidians themselves do. And much like the Devidians, has the ability to camouflage itself when outside a Devidian environment. Its true appearance is some sort of monster snake. And there is actually a full-size shot of it being held in the hand of a Devidian, where you can see like the entire body of it moving around while it's doing its thing. But when it's disguised, it just looks like a cane. Major plot significance because the fact that its ability to emit triolic waves is crucial to making the Davidian phase shift and dimensional whatever transference gimmick work. Because, it's not exactly time travel, it's not exactly interstellar teleportation. It's kind of sort of a mixture of the two things that uses what is, from a Star Trek perspective, metaphysical nonsense as a method of explaining how it works, because that's complicated. I did an episode about the Devidians already, and I don't feel like repeating all of that. Yeah, go back and find the one I did about Time's Arrow. Oh boy. Okay, and then for a major, major one, we have the Sur Snake. I am at some point going to have to go over the ambergris element episode. Given the way I've been doing this, doing things sequentially, although admittedly I started at episode 1 of TNG and didn't start at episode 1 of TOS, I'm going to do TOS eventually and TAS, and I'm looking forward to going over the ambergris element and micro-analyzing the in-universe significance of this thing, because of the fact that while at first glance in the episode it's just an alien monster, when you look at the backstory of the Argoan natives, there's a lot of backstory crammed into a short episode. And trying to unpack it all and make sense of it, takes longer than watching the episode. I love that. Seriously, that kind of thing is part of why I so greatly loved the Vengeance Factor in TNG, is because the fact that they did this deep dive into the culture and history of the alien of the week, that, the aliens in that they're doing the deep dive on are learning things about their own history, because the fact that, well, in the Vengeance Factor, the alien of the week, they had multiple factions, and these sub factions of the alien of the week civilization had been hiding things from each other. And the core problem that the crew of the Enterprise needed to solve is to figure out what these sub factions had of the Acamarians had been hiding from each other, and thus were hiding from the crew of the Enterprise as well. And that went down a rabbit hole, and that was a fun ride. This was also similarly a fun ride because, one, Argo is a post-cataclysm society that used to be a highly technologically advanced society, and is far less technologically advanced than they used to be, and thus most of the people on the planet don't actually understand the way their own civilization. Well, I can't even call it the same civilization. What their ancestors lived like before the catastrophe that upended their civilization and forced them to drastically change the way they go through everyday life and the implications of that. And somehow the Sur Snake is tied into all of that stuff and understanding the hows and the whys. And see, it's like it has a weird thing. It's like the um Argoans are not going to try to just murder them all. They have a historical significance to them that's kind of sort of a taboo to kill them. But they're, large and dangerous creatures. And they don't like them either, though. It's, again, that's a story. uh, then you have the Denebian whale. The Denebian whale is mentioned solely as a way of giving McCoy a reason to have some understanding of this Sur snake, even though he's never actually seen one before. So he's like, oh, hey, that looks a lot like a Denebian whale. That's literally the only thing that was ever said about a Denebian whale, though. Then you have this thing. It's kind of used for comic relief, but it's one of those like sci-fi monsters where the danger is something that's not immediately apparent, and it's something that would probably surprise players greatly if they ran into one without actually knowing ahead of time what the thing actually is. And that amuses me rather greatly, honestly, because it's the whole like, yeah, you see a cute animal that's round and makes this moopsy noise. What are you going to do with it? Yeah, don't stick your hand in its mouth. Would it immediately kill you by biting you? No. Would it hurt like hell and possibly cause you to need to go to sick bay for reconstructive surgery? Probably. Anyway, though, again, one of the things that to pay attention to when using animals in a story like Star Trek Adventures is, why am I bothering to mention this? Offhanded jokes are absolutely a good idea, but things that have plot relevance are also a major thing too. Because like the whole like Ophidian thing, the Sur Snake and Moopsy, each of them actually had a major role in the story. It's not necessarily a role that takes up a large amount of screen time in the case of the Ophidian, but the Ophidian is a key, I guess you could call it a MacGuffin, that they needed in order to progress the plot. Moopsy is just dangerous, but it's dangerous in a way that makes getting it to do what you want it to do essential to the plot, and thus the characters in the story can't just avoid the thing. At any rate, that's an adequate amount of pondering. See you guys later.